Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Discovery Night for Come From Away. Everybody make some noise. My name is Shea. I'm the Education Director here at QCT, and I am so thrilled and excited and honored to be moderating this event. Now, has anybody in this room ever been to a Discovery Night before? Please raise your hand if you've been to a. Wow. That's a lot. Thank you for coming back. Now, if you have not been to Discovery Night, let me tell you a little bit about what this is. So, for every production that we put on our stage, we provide an opportunity for the public to come in, to learn more about how we put the show together, to tie in some themes or community connections to the work that we're doing on stage. Because the work that we do here is for you. It's for Quincy, it's for the community. And the more that we can use the work on the stage to highlight what is already happening out in the world, the better. So that is what we will be doing today. And we have an incredible panel that embodies that very thing. With this particular production, we are really focusing on partnerships with various organizations out in the community that do real good every day. And so you'll get a chance to meet some of them today and hear about what they're doing and how we can tie that together into Come From Away. Joining me on the panel today is Ethan Nienaber, Director of the show, and Artistic Director. We have Dr. Ali of the Islamic Center of Quincy is here. Give it up for Dr. And Captain Rich from the Salvation Army is here. Give it up for Captain Rich. So, Ethan, let's talk to you first, please, since you have the microphone.
Sounds like a plan.
So, could you tell me a little bit about Come From Away? Just give me a rundown of what this show is about, if I've never heard of it.
Yeah, so Come From Away is truly what I call a modern classic. It is a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical that is about 9/12. Really, if I had to sum it up in one phrase, it's about 9/12. Well, what does that mean? It means it is about the days following 9/11 in a small town in Canada called Gander in Newfoundland. So that's that island in the northeastern part. And it is about how the American airspace closed in the wake of the terrorist attacks, and this small town of a little less than 10,000 took in almost double their population in airline refugees. So all the planes that were in the air at that time had to be grounded. They couldn't land in America. So many of them found their way to the small island of Newfoundland. And so Gander as a town totally rallied together. The people in that town came together to take in all of those stranded passengers and make sure that they had everything that they needed. And so what could have been, I think, a really tragic moment for even those that were grounded in Gander ended up being so much about what was found in the wake of so much tragedy. So it's I would say, to just paint some broad strokes, it's a really beautiful story about hope and about how coming together and, throwing your arm around your neighbor, whether that be from down the street or around the globe, is really all it takes to make the best out of a really dark situation in a dark moment. So it ended up into this show that is full of hope and joy and a little bit of creative problem solving, I would say, as we figure out how to host these folks. But it's a beautiful show about the community coming together.
It's a true story, too.
It is. It's an absolutely true story. Yes.
Not only is it a true story, but it's also a pretty recent true story. Does anybody here remember where they were on 9/11? I remember where I was. Wow, everybody does pretty much. Yeah. When you were working with the incredible cast on this, who were embodying characters who are real, or perhaps like an amalgam of several real people, how did they go about preparing to embody those characters? How did you guide them towards that? What kind of research is necessary to really treat a show that is a true story with respect?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I think the first thing to dig into a little bit more is that the writers, Dave and Irene, spent all of the 10-year reunion of this group of people that came back to Gander in 2011 to commemorate what had happened in Gander. They spent that entire reunion, which spanned the course of almost a month, there interviewing everyone. They interviewed everyone that they could meet. They tried to interview every single person that was on the list of attendees, both locally and from around the globe. And what came from that is that they had, what they said was like 12 different musicals they could have written because they got so obsessed with all the different people. They're on the record saying, we could have just written one all about Beverly the pilot. You know, this first female pilot for American Airlines. She has this incredible story, and so she's a big through line. And then we could have written one that was all about the mayor, Claude, in the story. And then we could have written another one all about this love story of these two passengers who were very unlikely to meet had this not happened, and so on and so on and so forth. And so, of course, that had to get amalgamized, as you said, into a show. Eventually, they realized they couldn't quite write 13 different musicals about this same topic. They wanted to try to find a way to condense it a bit. And so, what they did is they truly did take bits and pieces of everyone's true stories and combine them into many of the characters that you see. So one of the most tangible examples, and then this, I promise, gets back to actually answering your question a little more, is one of those tangible examples is our news reporter in the show. And you'll get a little bit of a taste of this character in the opening. She goes by Janice Mosher. But she is actually both the amalgamation of Janice, who is a real news reporter there, and her boss, whose last name was Mosher, who was the head of the station. And so they took all of those experiences that the two of them had together and found a way to just weave it together into one character for the show. So it's also true, right? But it is kind of its own version of it, right? It's the most efficient version of it to try to pack in a lot of story into this show. So what did we do to get into it? Well, we did a lot of talking about all of our experiences, of course, with what happened to us in our lives during this moment, because most, if not all of us, have some kind of tie to this in the company. And that was a really great jumping off point to say, okay, this is what we experienced, and how is that either incredibly similar to some of these experiences that otherwise on face value you might go, you know what, I wasn't stranded in Gander, I have no clue what that would be like. And then you sort of find the connections of, oh, wait a second, I either knew someone or, you know what, I'll speak from my own experience, I got stranded in Los Angeles for like 3 months. Like, yeah, so it's just, you know, it is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to dig deep into the details, right? Discover different cultures, to do research on what does it mean to transform into all of these different people on the turn of a dime and the change of a coat. But what we found is that so much of it's universal. So much of it is really true to all of our lived experiences in some way, shape, or form. And if you haven't had quite that version of that experience, you probably know someone who has. Right? So yeah, that's a long, broad answer, but I hope I got there for you.
Oh yes, and more. You know, Ethan, you just recently celebrated your 1-year work anniversary here at QCTS Artistic Director. And we've gotten very used to having you around, of course, which we love, right? But what you may not know is that this season is actually the first one that you had a hand in making happen, basically, in choosing the shows that would really resonate with this community, with these volunteers. Why come from away? What is it about this show that was like, this is going to be part of my inaugural season?
Yeah, well, I can say so many reasons, because I think this show, like the great tapestry that it is, has so many great opportunities to tell all these different stories. But what I really saw in Come From Away when we were considering it was, I'll be quite honest, my own experience with Quincy. I came here, for those that don't know, I came here as a guest director in 2024. And when I did, I was blown away by the community that I found. And I was a total come from away in that moment myself. That's what we call the folks who are not locals of Gander in the show, they're the come from aways. And I was my own come from away in Quincy. And so I read it, and I listened to it, and I watched it, and there's a beautiful pro shot out there that I've watched like 600 times. And I kept thinking to myself, this is Quincy. This is such the Quincy story. I know that there's some real Quincy lore about some of taking in refugees as well. But I couldn't help but think, how many other people who've come to call Quincy home and call this area home have had a similar experience of maybe not expecting it, but then as soon as you get entrenched, you go, wait a second, this community is phenomenal. I really love it here. I think I found a lot of things that I didn't expect to find. Yeah, so I think that was really a huge part of it for me, was going, I know I can't be the only one, right? I've heard stories of other people. I had, and I think a couple of these volunteers are either in the house right now or backstage, but I had a couple folks say to me during Newsies, they said, in the best way possible, Quincy's a little bit of a void, it'll suck you back in. You never know when it'll suck you back in. And I said, really? Okay, well, I guess time will tell, and here I am. So yeah, it's a great place that I think in so many ways is tied to Gander, with that attitude of, if you need something, hey, the lyric is, the candle's in the window and the kettle's always on, right? The door is always open. If you need something, just come knock, right? We will get you that pound of sugar and flour and whatever else you might need to get started and be okay. So yeah, it's a great community piece, and it made me think a lot about Quincy.
I second all of that. The Quincy vortex of it all. Now we're getting into some more of the themes of the show, and this is where we will include the rest of our wonderful panel here too. In conversations we've had, in the office about the show, you've used the phrase "compassion at any cost," which has really been guiding a lot of your directorial process. What does that mean, compassion at any cost?
I think another way to say compassion at any cost would be compassion despite the challenge, or compassion that's unconditional or knows no bounds, that you don't have any barrier to showing compassion for one another, for yourself too. I think there is so much of this story and so much of putting together a really challenging show that we've found throughout this process that is so much about saying, hey, I gotta show myself some grace here, because as you all will see in a little bit, even just in this opening number, this show moves fast. I always say it's a freight train of show. And how do you survive that as a performer, right? As a tech team, as a creative team, once the train really leaves the station? And it's really fortifying yourself through compassion. And that compassion comes in a lot of different ways. It comes through just taking our time to really give compassion to one another as we navigate this whole show. But it goes even beyond that. It goes into just how we walk through our daily lives, and this idea that these people in Gander had no clue that their compassion was going to be so needed. They had no idea that this was coming. There was no way to predict this. There was no way to prepare yourself for this. But in some ways, they were already completely prepared, because for whatever reason, Gander has that magical compassion at any cost in its heart of hearts. And so they knew that they would do whatever it takes. So that's been our MO. Yeah, that's been our mantra throughout this one. And I think it's yielded some pretty fun moments, and some surprising ones too, which is always great.
Well, one of those fun and surprising moments is, I think, all the partnerships that have emerged in our community around this particular show. When you think about the people in our community that make our community, that every day live that idea of showing compassion to others, welcoming people, telling a story of what is important to them. We have so many organizations, so many selfless people that work in that space, and we're inviting them to the show. So could you tell me a little bit more about how this partnership idea even emerged, and how you see it connecting to the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the show, there are so many different incredible individuals or characters that are amalgamations of a few individuals maybe, who are what I would call through and through do-gooders. And whether that's because they work for an organization or a nonprofit that does a lot of good in their community, or that's just in their nature, they are always looking to give back and looking to support their community in whatever way they can. So in the show, we've got Bonnie, who is a part of the ASPCA. We've got Claude the mayor. We've got of course Janice. We've got a police officer in Oz, right, and many more, right? The list just goes on and on. And so as we were approaching this show, we went, well, don't all of these incredible organizations and so many more in hopefully all of our communities have a place and have an incredible amount of work that they do that ultimately doesn't get enough recognition or have enough eyes on it in some way? And so this idea that we could have our own tapestry of incredible people that are a part of incredible organizations come together as a part of this show in our community really feels appropriate, because that's so much of what happens in the show. So that's what led us to having the two wonderful folks next to me and a few others in our process here.
Dr. Ali, you know, the Islamic Center of Quincy, tell me a little bit about what you do. What does the Islamic Center do, and how do you operate within that mission?
Before I do that, before I say that, I want to tell you about Quincy. You said about how you came to Quincy.
Yes.
Grew on you. When I finished my residency in St. Louis, I was looking for a position, and the director of pathology at Barnes Hospital, he said there's a little town on the river, Mississippi, just about a couple of hours north of here. They need a surgical pathologist. It's a very nice town. So I didn't know anybody here, so I just wrote a letter to the doctor, pathologist, didn't know his name, and said, I'm so-and-so, and Dr. Bauer told me about you needing a pathologist, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, I get a call from him, and I came up here for the interview, and I said, how can I live here? It is so small, I'll be suffocated. But I came anyway. My husband liked it. My daughter, who was about six and a half years old, she loved it. And I started working. And at first I felt like I was under the microscope, you know, and I was being watched. But like you, the Quincy became like a mold. It grew. It grew all over. And I said, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. And then there came a time, 5 years, 6 years later, when I changed my specialty and went into general practice and had my own lab. I thought I would move out. And I just discussed it with my daughter, who was a little older at that time, 11, 12. I said, I think Mom wants to move out. She didn't say anything, she just cried. Cried. And then that was the end. It's been 48 years, and people, Indians and Pakistanis, they come into town looking for a position as physician or engineer, and they invariably come to know me and they ask me, how long have you lived here? They say about 45 years, 46 years, or whatever. How can you live here for that long? I said, you haven't tried it, that's why. The people of Quincy has a heart as big as the town. They really are wonderful people. Compassion, they have it, you know. To answer your question, we didn't have a mosque here. There were churches all over. Every block had a church and also a bar. So I said, we should have, but we didn't have a place. We didn't have the money to build a place. So the 2 or 3 families, Muslim families that were in Quincy, we prayed in our basement for many years. Then my daughter got married, and 5 years later they expected their first son. And I said, I have to have a mosque here. My grandchild needs to know all about Islam, so I have to get a mosque. And I started asking for donations. I sent a letter to all the Islamic embassies in and around Europe and America, I was so sure that money would come pouring. I haven't got a reply yet. Nobody. But the people of Quincy found out that I was looking for donations, and they came to me. They brought money. And when I went into television and newspaper telling them that I was planning to found a mosque, they just said, everybody needs a place of their own to worship. And Dr. Ali needs one too. And the purity of their intentions, the purity of their love was just overwhelming. Then I started getting some donations from St. Louis and Quincy and Chicago. Then we got a place, and that's how we put the foundation. And we were, to begin with, my husband said, why do you need a mosque? We are just 3 or 4 people. And I said, if I build, they will come. And now we have about 30 to 40 families, and not as big as some of the churches. And we are really poor compared to the churches in town, but we are very happy that it is there.
That is a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And sharing, just how it began too, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Captain Rich, let's hear about the organization you represent too. Salvation Army, what's the mission? What is it that organization does? How do you play into that?
Just to rewind just a second, the Salvation Army's been here for over 130 years in our community. And that's about 20 to 30 years after the Salvation Army started in England, London, England. It was already here in Quincy. So that's quickly how it spread. People in our mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and meet human needs in his name without discrimination. And so serving suffering humanity, finding ways to meet people in their crisis. And we say sometimes there's little slogans, Christianity with our sleeves rolled up, actually putting our faith into action and addressing the needs of the people who come to our doors, no matter where they're from, no matter what they've experienced. They need to know that there's hope and that there's a brighter tomorrow than what they're experiencing today. And whether that's a referral based on what their faith is, and if there's another agency that can serve them and best meet their needs, we'll be glad to refer them. But if they're in our midst and in our circle of influence, we want to make sure that we can do everything we can to help stabilize that family and help get them back on their feet with dignity, serving with dignity always.
So when we were talking about this phrase, compassion at any cost, right? It seems that what you're talking about, it kind of resonates already with what you're doing, what Salvation Army does. But let's dig into that a little bit more. What are some of the cost of giving, again, rolling up the sleeves, and really getting out there? What are some things that people maybe wouldn't realize goes into serving so much in this community?
So many people know that we're running an emergency shelter, and that we have assistance with food and rent and utilities for those who wind up in a situation that they never dreamed that they would be in. There's folks that are one paycheck away from being at a point of crisis. And when they wind up at the doors and they need to know, what do I do? I've never been on this side of need. How do I navigate that? And having our caseworkers and those who are there prepared to receive them, welcome them, listen to their story, hear what they've gone through, so somebody can relate to what or at least hear what their experience has been. In preparation for what the cost is, we have to be ready to answer that call 24 hours a day. When that call comes in, no matter what it is, whether it's a plane at the airport, whether it's people being evicted, whether there's a fire. We have a canteen, which is like a mobile kitchen that can serve 1,500 meals out of this mobile kitchen at any given time, whether it's a search and rescue. We're prepared for the worst, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the disasters, and we pray for the best, that we never have to put that into place. But all that preparation and readiness and the partners with the other agencies in town to be ready to go should a situation happen, that's kind of the cost behind the scenes. Always being ready, always being prepared for what the foreseeable, but also in that moment we shift. All of our services shift. Like, during COVID, food. People needed food, and they needed it delivered, and they needed to be able to drive through pickup. So some of our other programs shut down while we're just taking care of the immediate need. And that's what you do, you mobilize. You just address the needs of the moment. People who are going through crisis need somebody to come alongside them, and maybe it's not even saying a word, but just the presence of being there. The ministry of presence. Sitting with someone, holding their hand, saying a prayer for them, knowing that they're not alone in what they're going through. And I think all of us can do a little bit more of that.
Absolutely. There's something about what you just said about just being present, right? About how, helping other people it's not really even a vocation. It's just something that is within us that we are, called upon to do. And it's about answering that call. And we're all capable of it, right? But it's not easy too. The idea of kind of the caretaker needing to be cared for, right? That's something that I think can certainly take a toll at times, right? If we could pass it back to Dr. Ali, I have another question for you. So, you just told us about building a mosque from scratch, basically, right? That certainly is not easy, right? What are some other things that make it hard to run a mosque in Quincy, Illinois? We were talking about this being a 9/12 story, right? What were the experiences of being a Islamic faith leader at a time that was really difficult for people who are Islamic, right? Or Muslims.
We got our mosque in 2001, just a couple of months before 9/11. And it was really difficult because we didn't have enough funds. We had bare minimum. And in Islam, when you're building something for God, you do it completely with cash. You don't get loans. So we don't go to a bank and say we need a loan of 60,000 or 100,000 and have to pay interest. There's no interest in Islam. So everything we got was cash driven, and we were able to just get about 40,000 or 45,000, and just at a small building at first. That was very difficult. And then when we moved to where we are now on North 12th, we got a shed, like a big, huge garage. I don't know what it's called. And so one of my patients, he said, my mother has this like a warehouse type of place. It's empty. It's got some small buildings. Offices. You can take all those out, and I construct it for you, and you believe me, and it was wonderful. It helped us a lot. But we ran out of money in the middle of the project. So my husband and I went to him and said, you can't continue to work because we have no money. And I said, oh my God, now what do I do? And so I'm an Indian from India, and I recognized that people in this town liked Indian food somewhat. And I was on a blog, and they liked Indian food. So I printed a cookbook of Indian recipes. And I sold it for $20 a piece, with every penny, every dime going into this project. And I got money from my blog readers from all over the country. and from different towns and different states, and Quincy, Quincy, they were wonderful. I made almost $10,000. So all of that went into this. That was a very hard time for us.
Yeah, it makes me think that, hospitality is a form of compassion, right? A meal is compassion.
Yeah.
Inviting people to just spend time with you or spending time with them is an act of compassion too.
I go to John Wood Community College almost every year to speak to some of the students there, and I invite them to come and spend the hour on Friday to listen to the khutbah, the sermon that our president gives, and watch how we pray. Our prayers are very different. We don't have chairs and pews in the mosque. People like me who have problem with me, we use chairs. But otherwise, everybody is seated on carpets, and so we stand and we bow and we prostrate. Because when we prostrate, we think, the highest part of our body is down to earth, and we are submitting ourselves to God. We are totally involved in knowing that we are in front of God. So I want the students to see that, and they come almost 2 or 3 times a year. Sometimes some of the students from Quincy University come, and they're very happy that they come. And I've gone and spoken to various churches and schools and at the university about Islam and how we pray. And in the month of Ramadan, the doors are open for iftar, which is the breaking of the fast in the evening, because our fasting is very different from the fasting that you do during Easter. We fast from before sunrise up till sunset without any food or water. It's mind over matter. People say, how can you do that? You can't. Even children do that, because it's just in you to feel that you're telling God, thank you for the life that you have given. So we open the doors, and people who are fasting, traveling, they all come into the mosque, and we lay out everything that we have, and they partake, and then we finish our prayers, and then they go on their way.
That's wonderful. So could anyone visit at
Yes.
specific times that they can visit?
Well, like I said, we don't have a resident imam, so it's not open all the time. There are some people who have the code to enter the mosque, and they go in at different times. We have 5 prayers that we do, and they go sometimes during the early morning prayers, or like now, 7:30, 7:45, there's the evening prayer, and then night prayer. Sometimes they do, but Fridays we are open from like about 11:45, 12 till almost 2 o'clock. And yes, anybody can come, and they do. I see a lot of people, and many young kids are turning towards Islam. They come and they ask, we want to learn about Islam. So we first ask them, do your parents know about this? Because we do not want parents to get upset with us, and sometimes they bring their parents along. So it's a beautiful thing for young people, adults and ladies and men who come and get into the mosque.
Thank you so much for sharing all that, Dr. Ali. Thank you. You pass it to Captain Rich. I'd like to ask, sort of a similar question, right? I mean, the Kroc Center, I've been there many times, right? Many times. What are some things that people may not know that are challenges facing the Salvation Army, right? What are some things that, I guess, as I asked Dr. Ali, in a perfect world, what are the resources, or even intangible things that would help what you do happen more, better, more widespread?
Sure. So as we look at what does serving serving people, meeting human needs look like? What does that look like specifically to our location? And we've been gifted with this beautiful Croc Center, which is something that's completely separate from what we normally do as the Salvation Army in every community. There's only a handful of them nationwide. I mean, there's 20-some there, but Little Quincy is the smallest community to actually have one of these centers. And while it's a place for people to work on their physical rehab and physical wellness and family engagement, it's also an opportunity for us to gather and do community meals for Easter or Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so people don't have to be alone on those days if they can come together. And we've started doing breakfast church every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., inviting people to come in. And we have a lot of folks from the park or downtown, people who may not have a place to go, that can come in and get a meal and sit and participate in the worship service while that's taking place. We do a meal throughout the week. We do a breakfast over by the shelter as well. And there's over 100 people that come out on a weekly basis for meals there. People may not know that all of the money that's raised in our community at the Red Kettles and throughout the Christmas season, even yearly or mailings throughout the year, all goes to our direct services. That's shelter. That is keeping people in their homes as much as we can. Diversion. We've had over 300 people in the shelter over in a year's time. But families that we've tried to keep in their homes and not be evicted. You know, that's super important, especially the children who are experiencing choices that the parents have made that affect those children, and trying to stabilize those families. So there's a lot of unique ways, whether it's donating items to our family store, because all of those proceeds are going right back across the street to the shelter and food pantry to keep that operation going. So you might have discarded items sitting in a basement or a garage that can be put back into use to be a blessing to others. And that's what we're always trying to find a way to connect people who are in need with the resources that are there. And you know, Quincy's a beautiful place to live. There's so many people who are so supportive of the work that's being done to help our neighbors in need. I always talk about that. Thank you for being a partner and helping our neighbors in need.
You know, the world is getting smaller, and yet sometimes people are maybe getting a bit more and more distant, especially when you think after COVID, right? What are some things that you do in your life to, just keep that spirit alive of goodness?
I personally, I have a lot of faith. I turn to prayers, I meditate, and then I see if my neighbor needs anything, go there, help out, go to the nursing homes and see if anybody needs anything there, or just sit there holding hands. Sometimes things like that, you know, there is, I think, some form of electricity that goes through, you know, and that helps me. That's what I do.
Captain Rich?
I would say it's important to see people for who they are. Everyone has a name, and we have a lot of points in common no matter what people are going through, that we have to connect with them, call them by name. There's a lot of people who are overlooked, forgotten. They have a name, they have a story, they have a history. Ask them their name. And if they're willing to share, that's great. I want to always encourage them to see beyond their circumstances and let them know this is a temporary thing. We can get through this, you know, and be willing to walk with them, but just to see them and connect with them.
It's a very, very, very good reminder, Ethan.
Yeah, I'll add and I think really echo what you've both said in my own way, which is just to keep showing up. Showing up for others when it would be easier to stay on the couch or stay in bed, or you know, and I really want to. Don't get me wrong. I think we can all relate to, like, gosh, it would be so much simpler if I could just stay put right now and knock it up and show up. And that is, I think the phrase, I think I'm preaching to the choir for QCTers, I know, because so much of our organization runs on volunteers, but I know you all experience that too. So much of what you all do runs on the spirit of people believing in it enough just to be present. And so I try to always remind myself that I don't have to always be at 200%, right? I don't have to be perfect. I never will be perfect in any situation, but what is perfectly enough is just being there, just showing up and putting my best foot forward no matter what that looks like on any given day.
I think it's something we all can learn from and model. And speaking of which, we're about to see some of those volunteers do their thing on this stage. So we're going to, first of all, give another round of applause for our panelists. You guys can make your way back into the house. Thank you so much for being with us.